The heavy, stale smell of the crowded apartment complex hung in the air, a noxious blend of incense and sweat. I was sat on Kyle's couch. Me and my friend Adam had been asked to come round because Kyle had a surprise for us. Laughter echoed from the other room as I waited and prepared for what would undoubtedly be an unforgettable night. Kyle and Adam both came walking out of the kitchen. Kyle had always been an eccentric who had a penchant for the extraordinary, and Adam had always been too happy to go along with whatever Kyle thought up, usually roping me in with him. This time, Kyle had just told us he had finally gotten hold of some DMT. He produced a little clear bag filled with shimmering crystal-like white flakes, like tiny shards of a shattered dream, and invited us to expand our minds. I was hesitant. The stories I'd heard were wild. Some of them even bordered on cautionary tales. Yet curiosity clawed at me, beckoning me to join in this plunge into the unknown. Just one hit, I told myself, thinking it harmless. After all, what could go wrong? Kyle had prepared and passed out our doses in equal measures. Me and Adam were gonna pack our pipe bowls together, then Kyle would guide us through the journey, as he called it. We mixed in a little of our usual weed to make it burn better and taste better. He told us to light and take a drag as big as we possibly could because doing it in one hit makes the trip a lot smoother. The first taste was electric. It poured through my lungs as I instantly felt my skin begin to tingle. I reclined back into the couch, and the walls began to ripple. Kyle was telling us to breathe in and out slowly with deep breaths. Colors danced across every visible surfaces, vibrant and alive, as if my surroundings had suddenly awakened from a long slumber. I was entranced. I could no longer hear Kyle. Time had dilated. Minutes felt like hours as I surrendered myself to the flood of sensations. Our laughter turned into a cacophony, each chuckle tearing through my psyche like a resonant bell. I closed my eyes, letting the sounds envelop me until they were no longer audible, momentarily forgetting where I was, who I was. I no longer had a personality or opinions. I was just a sense, a feeling, floating through an empty abyss of silent noise. When I dared to open my eyes again, everything had changed. The walls of the apartment had vanished. Nothing had a physical form. It had been replaced by a vast expanse of pulsating, colorful light, forming and representing shapes, reminiscent of furniture from the apartment. But there was also trees and benches, as if we were in a park. Everything felt temporary, though, like the shapes were free to change on a whim, free to become whatever they fancied. I stood up and instantly stumbled forward, my heart pounding in rhythm with the luminescent waves washing over me. I could see the wind blowing past me by the refraction of the colorful lights. I reached out, daring to touch the shimmering air, and as my fingers brushed against the luminosity, the world folded in on itself, tearing open a rift. An unseen, otherworldly hand seemed to yank me from my reality through the portal. I fell through darkness, sensations of color cascading around me sporadically like unbridled chaos. After what felt like forever, I hit the ground, landing on my feet atop of a large rock. I had fallen into a bizarre dimension, a desert-like abyss filled with warped echoes of life. I gazed around in awe at thousands of strange creatures composed of nothing but shadow and light that shifted and morphed into forms that teased my deepest fears and desires. I could sense them swarming around me, hungry for understanding, or perhaps to devour me whole. Amid the chaotic symphony, I seemed to be hearing a repeated, unsettling whisper almost beyond my comprehension. "I'm not meant to be here," the voices all whispered. It was thousands of voices causing a haunting echo, vibrating through the air with an unsettling certainty. "I need to go back inside," they were whispering in a frantic, panicked tone, fighting and clambering over one another as if to get at me. Then I realized I was one of these things. They weren't trying to get to me, they were fighting to get to the open portal that hanging was just above me. Panic surged through me as I tried to retreat back through it, but the realm pulsated around me. I could feel the fabric of my skin tearing as the creatures were digging in their claws, tugging at my limbs, dragging me down to climb up to this portal. "Wake up!" I screamed at myself, desperation clawing at my throat, but the words dissolved into the chaos, meaningless. How could I wake up? I wasn't even asleep. What even is sleep? It was like the memory of my past life was slipping away and I was becoming these creatures, or maybe I always was one. I looked up through the portal as the visions shifted. I saw glimpses of life flash before me. This wasn't my life. It was millions upon millions of people's lives flashing past the portal in turn, at an alarming rate. I needed to get back to my life before I forgot who I was and became one of these creatures forever. I tried to climb through. I reached in, grabbing for a handhold until I finally got a grip. I pulled, but as I pulled myself through, I was pulling one of these creatures the opposite way. I dragged it out of the portal, using it as leverage to pull myself through. As I got my head through, an instant onrush of memories came to me. Memories of school growing up, my first day at work, meeting and marrying my husband, giving birth to my daughter. Wait, I didn't have a daughter and I am a man, so I couldn't give birth. Or was I? Suddenly, I was dragged back down through the portal by the creatures grabbing at the lower half of my body. I was falling once more for what felt like an hour through a kaleidoscope of nightmares and color. I landed again on my rock, surrounded by these creatures. We were all fighting to get back through this portal. For what felt like an eternity, I was tossed between thousands of realities, constantly falling and climbing to fall again. Each time I got my head through and dragged another creature from the portal, I replaced them in their human life for a short time, instantly downloading their memories and becoming that person before being dragged back out and losing them again to another one of these creatures. Each time was more painful than the last, the creatures tearing at my skin as they fought me for a place in the human realm. I felt the weight of infinity pressing down upon me, suffocating in a snake pit of grotesque creatures, where every touch burnt excruciatingly as more and more nerve endings were exposed by their sharp, grasping claws. This was it, my last chance. I put everything I had left into it. I closed my eyes tight to be able to push myself harder, grasping through the portal and dragged myself up by whatever I could get my hands on. The waves of memories were flooding in. This was me. I kicked and pulled and forced my full body upwards until I could no longer feel the burning pain of claws scraping on my bare nerve endings. At the final second, I heard a harsh whisper over the top of the cacophony of other creatures screaming and fighting each other. "I must get back," they hissed. Then that was it. No more falling or pain or noise. I opened my eyes. Time bent back toward me, and I awoke gasping on the familiar couch, my friends staring at me in bewildered concern. But something was different. Was this my life? Were these people really my friends? I thought I had kids. What happened to my wife? Or was it my husband? What happened? Adam stammered, worry flickering in his eyes as he looked at me. My mind raced, racing to stitch together the fragments of that other world, but it was foreign. I tried recounting my experience, but the words jagged against my tongue, incomprehensible, tangled. The reality I had known before felt like a half-formed dream, slipping through the cracks of my understanding. Days that followed turned into weeks, and weeks morphed into months. I found myself plagued by existential dread as remnants of that other dimension lingered in the back of my mind like shadows just out of reach. I became detached from the ordinary, weighing each moment against the fragments of my experience. Was this really my life? Or had I stolen it like the hundreds of others I stole, but this one I managed to keep? Condemning somebody else to eternity as one of these grotesque creatures fighting for freedom in a horrifying abyss. Reality itself felt hollow. Was this reality? Or was that abyss the only real place? Where the fallen battle as shapeless creatures to get back into this simulation we call life? I became paranoid, questioning every interaction and every truth. Did anybody else know? My friends grew concerned, but I was bound in this cage of understanding, yet not being able to articulate my experience for them to understand. And even if I could, nobody would believe me. Then, late one night, I opened my laptop to research the boundaries of consciousness. The tales of others who had crossed over echoed within me, resonating with a familiar pulse. But the knowledge that others had shared my experience didn't offer me any comfort. It only made me feel worse because it just made it feel more real. "I'm going out." I grunted at my dad as I passed towards the front door. I needed fresh air. I didn't look back. I'm probably not his real son anyway. His real son is probably still fighting to get back to this life right now amongst the others. I walked aimlessly through the streets at night in an attempt to ease my mind. The enormity of it all weighed heavy on me. Had I stolen this life and condemned an innocent person to eternity in that place? Even if I didn't, could that happen again? And one of them creatures can suddenly grab me and replace me like nothing? Reality will never hold the same meaning. As I looked over the side of the bridge, staring blankly down at the passing cars on the highway beneath me, feeling trapped in a simulation of the life I had ended up in. The weight of my existence and a million snippets of broken memories from the hundreds of past lives that I experienced bore down on me. I whispered into the darkness, "Is this really my life?" The silence that answered was suffocating. I'd made up my mind. I let go and was falling again. But this time, it would be for the last time. So we've closed the jar again. Join us next time and subscribe for more, if you dare.